So with those remarks, let me kick off first with Ambassador Chinoy, who has a broad remit in terms of the work he focuses on, and of course also being chair of the Think 20 core group this year. Ambassador Chinoy, perhaps you can just provide us, by way of kickoff, a little bit of a sense of the global context in which these developments around energy are taking place. And also then I'd like you to focus specifically on India's green hydrogen journey, which I think is something that a number of developing countries are embarking on, not least my own, South Africa and Namibia and so on. Perhaps you can reflect a little bit on that too. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth, and my grateful thanks to Dr. Ebtisam and Dr. Samir Saran for having me here. It's a great pleasure to see old friends from our Think 20 events held in India and overseas. Let me begin by simply endorsing what you said. There's a very close link between energy, climate, and growth. And now that we've had a very successful New Delhi Leaders' Declaration during India's G20 presidency, it's also time to evaluate what went into that declaration and then walk the talk. So there is a direct link between the G20 outcomes and COP28, and I do hope that we'll be able to get there. As far as India is concerned, we've always emphasized the linkages between energy and development. And Prime Minister Modi in particular has been taking a number of initiatives. You know that India made certain nationally determined commitments at the COP21 in Paris in 2015, and later actually improved upon these at COP26. This was called the Panchamrit, the five ambrosia or five nectars policy. The whole idea was to get to roughly 500 gigawatts of our energy coming from non-fossil fuel. But there are other initiatives also taken in the context of the International Solar Alliance, the One Sun, One World, One Grid concept. That's the Green Grids initiative. More particularly, Prime Minister Modi's Lifestyles for Sustainable Development, known as LIFE, which found clear mention, as you know, in the G20 statement as well. And India's been doing a great deal with regard to vehicular pollution also. We've tried to move through the faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles, known as FAME2, to try and change our own matrix of energy. Having said that, let me say that there was broad agreement in Paris on combating climate change, and since then big changes have taken place. The whole problem is that there is a weakened multilateralism today. And G20, India's presidency stands out for actually bringing people together in the same room and forging a certain kind of consensus, especially with regard to the Green Development Pact. And the importance of linking climate action with the achievement of the all-important sustainable development goals of the UN 2030 agenda. So this is something that we have to focus on, especially the availability or non-availability of technology, availability or non-availability, more particularly of finance, hybrid finance at that, and the need to innovate and to share innovations with the global South. Now, we have seen that there have been technological advancements in the last 10 years or so, but these have not necessarily percolated down to economies of the global South. The top three emitters are essentially China, the US, and India. They account for 42.6% of total emissions, but of these, India has the lowest per capita emissions. You are aware of that. Roughly 1/3 of the global average. In fact, the lowest among the top 10 emitters of greenhouse gases. And even with 1.4 billion people, an economy that is now the 5th largest in the world, soon to be the 3rd largest in the next 5 years, growing at roughly 7%, India has actually got very low per capita emissions. And our historical contribution has also been very low. So this is the backdrop from which I think we should look at India's initiative with regard to green hydrogen. We want to become the hub of green hydrogen. We are on a resolute march towards achieving that. At COP26, Prime Minister Modi committed to a number of things. Earlier this year, you're aware that in January 2023, India allocated US $2.5 billion for its national green hydrogen mission. By 2030, we are likely to have the capacity of 5 million metric tons per annum, which can provide renewable energy addition of about 125 gigawatts to our matrix. The current global demand for hydrogen is growing. It's about 70 million metric tons. But the irony is that 76% of this is being produced from natural gas, which is again fossil, and 23% from coal, again fossil fuel. Only 1% comes from electrolysis of water. So the key challenge before us today when we look at green hydrogen, whether in India or anywhere else, is in fact the cost. The cost of green hydrogen is much higher as compared to grey hydrogen or anything else for that matter. And greater emphasis, in my view, is required in order to create the right kind of infrastructure for producing green hydrogen, especially in electrolyzers. Unless this is done, I think it will be impossible to actually make green hydrogen competitive or competitive enough. The market in India for green hydrogen, cumulative value in India, could be about US $8 billion by 2030 and US $340 billion by 2050. So I think I'll just stop on that note that concessional funding is required. The PPP model is relevant to furthering the objectives of green hydrogen, whether in India or elsewhere. Sharing of technology among multiple stakeholders. Unless we do that, unless there is an equitable green transition towards notably green hydrogen, we are not going to be able to ensure the achievement of the climate action goals and objectives, certainly not in time. And the net zero objectives will also be that much more difficult to achieve. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Ambassador. Sort of around it's not quite the table, it's not a tour de table, but a very rapid response from each of you about perhaps the one thing that you would like to see coming out of COP28 or COP29, because we know these are processes, and perhaps the one thing that we can do regionally as well, perhaps, in terms of dealing with the green development imperative. Because I think you've made a very important point about the importance of regional cooperation. Clearly there needs to be global, but also regional. Who wants to go first? Ambassador Chinoy.
Thank you very much. I have two quick points to make. One is that the Global Biofuel Alliance that came out of the G20 declaration in Delhi must be greatly welcomed. But the point is that there are 3 countries leading the charge of the Light Brigade here. That's India, the United States, and Brazil, now supported by 12 countries and 19 international organizations. But mind you, all the main producers of fossil fuels have not yet signed on to the Global Biofuels Alliance. So I hope something comes out on that score. The other point here is that I'd like to see this not only go into blending, ethanol being used for blending, as we are in India now doing 20% blending by 2025 of all our petrol and fuel that we'll use. In aviation fuel, I think there's great scope to do much more, beginning perhaps with 1% or as little as that. But may I also suggest that there should be a new kind of carbon tax or an examination of how war machines pollute and whether we ever study what a tank does or an aircraft does when there is a raging war in Ukraine or in the Middle East. Do we ever speak of green transitions there as well? Can you fight a war with green fuel, please, for God's sake, if you can't stop the wars? So that's something. And coal, I think, is also very important. I hope at COP28, some allowance is made for the continuation of coal, because coal is going to be around for a long time. It's the cheapest. And let me tell you that the capacity utilization in renewable energy projects is 1/3 that of thermal. So it's not just India that will have to, with its large reserves of coal and large requirements, continue to use coal alongside the emphasis on green transition, but also countries like Germany and many others are doing just that. So let's also face reality, accept reality, and try and achieve a balance between what is doable, what is feasible, what is desirable. Thank you.
Great, that's great, thanks. I see we're right on time, but Promit, are you saying we can take 2 questions? Excellent, we can take 2 questions. Let's take both questions and then we'll revert to the panel.
Hello, I'm Mornila Tucci. I'm coming from Albania, a small country in Balkans, South Europe. So my question is, you are talking about global finance and that we all developing countries, we need support from the polluters, let's say. But my question is, what your countries are doing? What are your budgets in your governments about the climate issues and climate change issues?
Okay, right. Do now is I'll start with you and then move this way, just very quickly. Yeah.
Very briefly, I think the onus is primarily on the MDBs and the manner in which they create financing and provide financing. But I also think that the large regional economies in different geographies have it incumbent upon them to make their lines of credit, existing lines of credit for regional development, veered towards green transitions, and use those lines of credit to provide some kind of finance for green transitions in their own region.
Thank you all very much. I think a round of applause to everybody.